And so begins our coverage. Brian Williams here with you in New York. Two ways, of course, of looking at what just transpired on that stage in Las Vegas, Nevada. 6 people fighting for themselves, 6 people who, over the course of 2 hours, sometimes savaged each other. And at some point, someone on that stage is going to have to run against the incumbent president. Sometimes at the end of what we just saw, throwing in the old bromide, what brings us together is greater than what divides us, doesn't accurately depict what we just witnessed. We're here in New York. Nicolle Wallace here with us, of course, former White House communications director, current host of Deadline White House, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, unless there's something I don't know. Claire McCaskill, former Democratic senator from the state of Missouri. Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root, a professor at Morgan State. Lawrence O'Donnell, host of The Last Word, 10 p.m. Eastern, weeknights on this network. In the spin room in Las Vegas, our own Chris Matthews. At the big board, of course, Steve Kornacki. Nicolle?
You know, I think that look, I had the job for a long time of running into the spin room and explaining why my candidate won. And it's always been sort of a dubious craft. I think tonight more so than ever, because I think just about all these candidates can make a claim to having an important night in terms of what they're trying to achieve. I think that if you were waiting for Biden to, be as focused and in command as he was tonight, you finally got it. If you wanted Pete Buttigieg to show a national audience why he won Iowa, you got it. If you are one of the millions of people who has sort of thrust Bernie Sanders to the top of the national polls, you saw what you love about Bernie Sanders. If you love Amy Klobuchar, you saw her defend herself and fight. And if you're an Elizabeth Warren fan who wondered why she dipped in the polls, I think you saw all the fight come back in her. I think that what was hanging over this was the introduction of Mike Bloomberg in the race. Mike Bloomberg's campaign doesn't really rely on these debates, but he has to go through them to get beyond them. We'll see if I think people will have analysis about Bloomberg that's everything from he's disqualified to, he sort of stood apart and it may not matter. I think what we learned in 2016 is what we say and think matters a whole lot less than what it felt like in the room and what the Democratic primary voters in Nevada think about what they saw on that stage.
One note to our viewers, we along with you just witnessed a moment, let's call it, between Biden and Bernie on stage. The last time this happened on a debate stage, the host network did indeed have audio of both participants. We are re-racking to see if we can tell what was just said. Claire McCaskill, your interpretation of the free-form evening we just witnessed.
Well, it was a little bit like a presidential version of Survivor. There was a lot of punches and counter punches. You can tell the stakes have been ratcheted up. There are candidates that were on that stage tonight that know they won't be around in 30 days.
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10. Maybe after Super Tuesday. So tonight was a big, big night, and it showed. I thought Elizabeth Warren came out swinging and landed some significant punches on Mike Bloomberg. I don't mean literally, obviously, but figuratively. She was certainly lived up to her moniker of fighter tonight. I thought she had a strong debate performance. I thought Mayor Pete did very well tonight, and I thought Joe Biden had one of his better debates. Really. This has not been his moment, these debates. I do think that I was disappointed that we didn't have any discussion about the rule of law being systematically dismantled in our country. That's what's on my mind. I think it's on a lot of people's mind. And the circular firing squad, there's a danger there. There wasn't enough pivoting to talk about the real problem, which is Donald Trump. And will we get through this? Yes. Will the Democrats still unify? I believe we will. But this kind of debate makes it a little tougher.
It does. I'm so glad you raised the rule of law, because we are sitting here at a moment where this is the eve of the Roger Stone sentence. And there's a lot of speculation in Washington on the right and on the left that Donald Trump is contemplating and aware of his power to pardon. So I share your dismay, and I found it a little disconcerting that at a moment where Trump is consumed with a revenge tour to punish all of the civil servants that testified in impeachment, and on a pardon palooza, again, you're freeing felons and
corrupt people.
Corrupt people.
Mr. I hate corruption.
I'm surprised it didn't come out more.
Jason Johnson.
Yeah, so the big new name tonight was going to be Mike Bloomberg, and this probably was the most expensive night in Vegas I've ever seen. He lost everything. This guy has spent $320 million. He had the opportunity to really stand on stage and appear to be an equal with everybody else, and he looked bored. He looked disenchanted. He absolutely stumbled over very obvious questions that anybody could have anticipated about sexual harassment and NDAs and stop and frisk. I thought it was a very bad night for him. He's probably doubling the salaries of his staff who want to go into the spin room, because I wouldn't want to go in there and defend him after the night that he had. But I'll also say this, as far as unity or people getting together, the most critical question tonight was when the moderator asked, look, if somebody heads into the convention and they have the most delegates, but they have not hit the threshold, does that automatically make them Democratic nominee? And everybody said no, except for Bernie Sanders. I think that's indicative of what we're going to see. These candidates are going to continue fighting forward. They're not necessarily going to fall in line just because Bernie's in the lead. And I think this is going to be a long and hopefully productive conflict going forward in the campaign.
By the way, because we come to know how these candidates roll and their friends and family in settings like this, that's Diana Taylor on stage next to Mike Bloomberg, who's been a partner of his for many years. He mentioned her, though not by name, just yesterday. Lawrence O'Donnell, and then we're going to swing down to Chris Matthews. Lawrence, I'm tempted to ask who's going to tell them that they have to run against Donald Trump in a few months.
They're going to get there. And there was some running against Donald Trump tonight, but obviously there was a lot of running against Mike Bloomberg. And Mike Bloomberg did have some strong moments for Mike Bloomberg. However, he suffered the worst blows on that stage. The non-disclosure agreement round that Elizabeth Warren opened up on him, and the women and others at his company who have non-disclosure agreement settlements, Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren double teaming Mike Bloomberg on that, saying release them right now on TV from their obligation not to disclose. And Mike Bloomberg absolutely wasn't ready for that at all. On the other hand, and by the way, on the Bernie Sanders thing about he thinks the person with the most delegates, even if it isn't enough to lock up the nomination, should get the nomination, that is exactly opposite of the Bernie Sanders position of exactly 4 years ago.
Right.
When someone else he believed was going to go into that convention with the most delegates. So that's always a position of convenience and always has been. The most fascinating thing that happened on the stage, our viewers at MSNBC got to see during a commercial break in a box on the screen, and that was after Elizabeth Warren just flattened Mike Bloomberg a number of times. Mike Bloomberg and Elizabeth Warren spent the entire commercial break in very cordial conversation with each other that was real. They weren't doing that stiff thing of turning away from each other. They were exchanging ideas. If there's audio of anything, that would be really fascinating to hear. And I'm sure they will give us their version of what that conversation was, because it had absolutely nothing to do with everything else you saw on TV during the actual debate.
Chris Matthews, I'm sorry. I just wanted to remind.
Of course.
I wanted to remind everybody how it started off.
Yeah.
What Lawrence is referencing between Elizabeth Warren and Mike Bloomberg. We'll go down to Chris after that.
I'd like to talk about who we're running against. A billionaire who calls women fat broads and horse-faced lesbians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Mayor Bloomberg.
So that's how they got underway tonight. They brought haymakers for the first round. Chris Matthews, you're at the venue watching along with us in Las Vegas. What'd you make of it?
Well, I never saw anything like it. It was the Roman Coliseum. It was boxing in the 1950s. You wait for the other guy, Carmen Basilia or something like that, to get a cut over their eye, and then you keep punching the cut over their eye over and over and over again. That's what they did to Bloomberg. That's what Elizabeth Warren did to Bloomberg. She knew his weakness was the NDA, and she kept punching the spot, and it kept bleeding and bleeding. He had no way to stop. He didn't have a cut man. He should have had somebody before the event, the bout tonight, to warn him, this is what they're going to hit you on, and they're going to keep hitting you on it till you answer, release the women or something. I think that's what it was about tonight. What we saw, though, is also Elizabeth Warren, who was really doing the punching. She came back tonight. I think she's fought herself back into third place, maybe better, maybe second out here. I think she's probably disappointed that she wasn't tougher in New Hampshire. Everybody said that she wasn't the fighter. She was the fighter tonight. I believe she hit every other single candidate. I don't know if she made her way to Biden. If not, it's only because she didn't think it was worth it. She hit every other candidate hard, really hard. And I think it was because she has to get her position back in the top tier. I also thought Buttigieg would not lay up on Klobuchar. He wouldn't lay it up on the fact she didn't know the president of Mexico. He kept punching her weak spot, her wound, over and over again. It was the boxing match in which nobody pulled back and said, enough. And nobody clinched. Everybody kept fighting. I'll tell you, I think Trump probably likes the look of it. I'm not sure he's right. On first view, it looks awful and bloody. Everybody attack each other, circular firing squad, all those cliches. But maybe what we saw there was a lot of passion. And maybe that passion is going to get through. But there's only one candidate there who believes he's going to have the most delegates going into Milwaukee. And we know it was. He was the guy that said that person should be the winner. Everybody else said tonight, I will not have the most delegates. They all made it official. They were not going to give the win to the guy or the person with the most delegates. That was so telling tonight. Today, it was an acknowledgement that Bernie is the winner, not the winner so far in this whole fight. And he may be the winner all the way, and I think they think so.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.